Today's lesson is on using neutral density filters, so often referred to as ND filters. The first thing is, why do people want to use ND filters? If it's bright and sunny out, an ND filter is a darkening filter, so it will just darken your exposure, allowing you room to play with the shutter speed. And so it's a great opportunity to slow down moving clouds, as you'll see in our example today. You can also capture nice streaming water during the daytime or when there's more light than what you would be able to capture with a 2 or a 3 second photo. And so we're going to go ahead and experiment with this and practice throwing on some ND filters here at a local pond. It is 34 degrees out in Flagstaff right now, and so I do have some nice gloves to keep me warm, and we do have sun coming and going, so I'll talk about my settings as I get closer to the camera and start shooting. So in choosing ND filters, you have an option. You can choose a variable ND filter, which allows you to rotate the lens, and it goes from 1 stop of darkening up to possibly 8 stops of darkening, depending on the manufacturer of the filter. Or you can do a solid 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 stop, whatever it might be, when it comes to darkening. And so depending on what you're trying to shoot and what your goal is, both are great filters, and there's quite a variety out there. I personally like to have a variable ND filter. It's a 1 to 8 stop when I photograph water in the daytime, but then if I'm really looking for dramatic images, potentially converting them to black and white, I like to use the 15 stop. So those are my options, and that's what I'm going to show you. So just to give you an idea, the variable filter, as I rotate, you can probably see that it gets lighter and darker. So when that's screwed onto the lens, then I have that flexibility. It also makes it a little easier to focus because I can rotate it where it's less dark, focus, and then darken it back up. When I use a traditional 15 stop filter, it's so dark you're not allowed to, you cannot focus. So you have to achieve focus, set your camera to manual focus, and then screw on the ND filter. And then you'll have the focus that you want. Now you might notice my filters look a little thick, and the reason why they look a little thick is they have a ring attached to them. So when I first purchased these filters, I used a different lens, or I have a variety of lenses, but I purchased the filter for the largest lens diameter that I would ever use it on. So in this case, since I use the Olympus system, but I was using Nikon, I purchased 77mm filters. My lens, this lens, is a 72mm, so I bought a $10 ring, step-up ring, so that way it would allow me to step up from the lens to the filter, and that way I can use the filter on any lens. My smaller macro lens has a step-up ring as well. Looks kind of funny to have this big filter on a teeny tiny lens, but that way I don't have to buy multiple filters, and so it makes it more efficient and cost savings in the long run. All right, let's get the filter on and try some sample images. So let's go ahead and add the filter. First off, my current settings are f11 and 1/250th of a second. So let's go ahead and add the filter. Just screwing it on the front. This is the Singh-ray ND more slow 15 stop filter, and I'm very pleased with it, really happy with the results. And instantly that has brought my shutter speed down to 60 seconds. And actually the 60-second mark is flashing, therefore I need to open up my aperture a little bit more so it stops flashing, and it looks like I can do f10. And well, actually might change just slightly depending on how the light is hitting, because now it's no longer flashing at the f11. So if it's flashing, that's your camera telling you there's not going to be good exposure. And in an aperture priority, to go beyond 60 seconds isn't possible. I would need to switch over to manual mode, which I could do easily as well. The next thing I want to do, because it's a 60-second photo, is I want to add a shutter release. And so I could put a 2-second timer. I'll do that this first time, and then I'll grab my shutter release for the next images. Because I don't want to be touching my camera when I take the exposure, because I want to avoid any kind of camera shake. So here we go, there's the exposure, and we're starting our 40-second photo. or 60-second photo. So now I've rotated the camera to capture images of the water. So like before, I'm going to do manual focus. I'm going to go ahead and capture an image beforehand just so I can show you the difference. And then I'm going to add my ND filter. And this time with my shutter release, I'm going to go ahead and take that image. And again, it becomes this one's now a 40-second photo. So we'll go ahead and let that image start. So let's review. ND filters, or neutral density filters, are mainly used to darken the exposure, allowing you slower shutter speeds in the photo that you plan to take. They come in variable exposure options or fixed exposure options, so 3-stop, 4-stop, 5-stop, and so on. So depending on what you plan to shoot will depend on what type of filter you want to pick up. If you're wanting to slow down water or show the wispy clouds, or videographers even use ND filters if they're trying to get a nice shallow depth of field in the middle of the daytime. If there's too much sun, too much exposure, the only way to get that achieved shallow depth of field would be to use an ND filter. So give them a try.